What would force a reigning monarch to remove his own royal guards, those sworn to protect the crown? When whispers emerged that King Charles personally dismissed several of his most loyal protectors, the world assumed scandal. But when it was revealed the guards had refused to protect Catherine, Princess of Wales, the story shifted from shocking to catastrophic. This wasn't just insubordination, it was mutiny at the gates of Buckingham Palace. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. In the hours that followed, the palace corridors felt charged with a tension usually reserved for national emergencies, not internal discipline. Yet this was no ordinary dispute. It carried the weight of betrayal, fear, and a dangerous fracture that had silently grown beneath the glittering facade of royal unity. The news did not break gently. It erupted like a storm. Cameras flashed outside the palace gates as the sudden dismissal of several elite guards sent reporters scrambling for answers. These were men known for their precision, their dedication, their almost unshakable loyalty. Their removal in a single sweep suggested something far darker than a simple breach of protocol. And as the media frenzy grew, speculation intensified. Some claimed the guards had challenged an order. Others whispered that they had refused a specific assignment involving Catherine. But the narrative shifted brutally when an anonymous insider leaked a chilling detail. Catherine had been left exposed during a scheduled transfer between palace wings, a lapse so severe it forced the king's immediate intervention. What deepened the suspicion was the contrast in security coverage. Observers quickly noticed that while Charles moved with an expanded buffer of protection, Catherine's movements appeared almost stripped back. Footage from recent engagements revealed a shrinking perimeter around her, a detail that suddenly felt sinister rather than administrative. Viewers began to wonder whether this was an oversight or a deliberate choice. Inside the palace, Charles's emergency security meeting did nothing to calm the situation. Witnesses described a gathering far more heated than the polished exterior of royal order would ever suggest. One aide later confided that the atmosphere felt combustible, as if long-standing tensions had finally erupted into the open. Hints of fractured loyalty began surfacing from every corner of palace life. Former guards anonymously confessed that divisions within the ranks had been growing for months, quietly splitting loyalties between different royal households. Some supported Catherine wholeheartedly. Others questioned her role, her rising influence, her expanding presence on the global stage. These silent disagreements may have remained buried had the guard incident not forced them into the light. And though no one dared admit it publicly, truth echoed through the palace corridors. The unity of the crown was under threat from within, eroded not by public scandal but by internal hesitation and concealed defiance. But what could make trained royal guards defy their sworn duty to protect a future queen? The answer lies in secrets buried beneath the surface of royal unity, secrets that now threaten to rewrite everything the world thought it understood about loyalty inside the monarchy. The royal guard are not just ceremonial, they are sworn agents of loyalty, bound by bloodlines of tradition and iron discipline. Yet behind the grand facade, a quiet rebellion brewed. For months, subtle gestures hinted that not all was well between Catherine and those tasked to shield her. What caused this fracture of allegiance? And who encouraged it? Whispers within the palace corridors had long carried an uneasy tone. There were moments fleeting, but telling when Catherine would arrive at official engagements only to find her escort, detail unprepared, or worse, conspicuously delayed. These weren't isolated incidents. Patterns began to form. The pauses in protocol, the hesitant glances, the shrinking presence of once reliable guards. To the casual eye, it was nothing. But to those within the monarchy, it was a message cloaked in silence. Then came the memo leaked, of course, from someone buried deep in the operational core. It revealed a subtle but undeniable fracture. A growing disagreement among senior palace personnel about Catherine's expanding influence. While some believed her modern approach was vital to the monarchy's survival, others viewed her popularity as a destabilizing threat. The document, carefully worded and thick with formality, made it clear. Not everyone in uniform supported the Princess of Wales. And among those who didn't, Action was quietly encouraged. The atmosphere turned cold. Even the retirement of a decorated veteran guard, long considered a silent protector of the Wales household, raised eyebrows. He left without ceremony, without a public statement, just vanished like a loyalist, choosing exile over betrayal. Inside the palace, the Guard Corps began to reflect a deepening division. Insiders began to refer to it as the invisible fault line, a rift between those aligned with Charles and those drawn to William's modern vision. It wasn't official, no names were spoken, but choices were made. Commands were followed selectively. Loyalty, once absolute, became fractured. One chilling remark, overheard by a junior aide and never forgotten, laid bare the sentiment that had begun to take root. "She's not one of us." It echoed like a warning shot through the ranks. Catherine's presence no longer inspired unity, it provoked resistance. And this resistance didn't wear badges or make speeches. It moved in silence, with folded arms and turned backs. Speculation surged that the Guard Corps had been compromised not by external threats, but by rival factions within the monarchy itself. The lines between duty and allegiance had blurred. Palace guards were no longer just protecting royals, they were playing pieces in a quiet civil war over the future of the crown. Every corridor became a battlefield of loyalties, every assignment a test of silent allegiance. The betrayal Catherine faced wasn't loud, it was slow, strategic, almost invisible. But if this was a rebellion, then someone was stoking it from the shadows, and it wasn't just about Catherine, it was about power. Behind every royal decision, there are whispers, private advisors, hidden motivations, and long-standing rivalries. Sources close to the palace allege that Queen Camilla's circle quietly questioned Catherine's rising stature and her dangerous popularity. Was the removal of her security a silent message from the Queen's court? That possibility, once unthinkable, now feels chillingly plausible. The timeline alone paints a damning picture. As Catherine's approval ratings soared across global media platforms, outshining even Charles and Camilla in some international rankings, the atmosphere in royal chambers grew heavy with unspoken anxiety. She was becoming not just beloved, but iconic, a figure whose natural grace and calm strength threatened to eclipse the old order. Behind closed doors, events unfolded with surgical precision. Private functions, once expected to include the Princess of Wales, subtly omitted her name. Lavish evenings, hosted by Camilla, events meant to demonstrate unity and royal continuity, mysteriously failed to extend invitations to Catherine. The press was never told. The public was never informed. But within the palace, it was noticed. Every absence sent a quiet message. Every exclusion deepened the divide. And then came the most disturbing detail of all. Credible intelligence indicating that an advisor within Camilla's circle had increasing sway over the assignment and rotation of guard personnel. Not just in theory, in practice. The very security protocols surrounding Catherine had been influenced, if not manipulated, by someone who reported not to Charles, but to the Queen. Historians began to draw parallels that no one wanted to hear. One expert, deeply familiar with the patterns of the past, warned of echoes of Diana's treatment. A woman rising in popularity. A woman drawing too much attention. A woman sidelined not by scandal, but by strategy. These weren't just coincidences, they were deliberate acts of marginalization. And the emotional toll on Catherine was becoming harder to ignore. Sources inside her household spoke of isolation, fatigue, a gnawing sense of betrayal she refused to voice in public. She maintained grace, as always. But those closest to her saw the shift something had broken. Not publicly, not with headlines, but within. Just days before the guard dismissals, Charles and Camilla held a private meeting, one that was not on the public schedule, and one that, according to insiders, ended in raised voices and an ultimatum. No official record was kept. But those present say the topic of Catherine's security was central. And when the guards were removed shortly after, questions exploded behind the scenes. Had this been Camilla's warning shot? A power move disguised as protocol? The Queen consort may not wear the crown, but her influence is undeniable. And when that influence turns inward toward silencing rather than support, the consequences can shake even the firmest foundations of royalty. But if Camilla's circle played a role, why would Charles risk his reign by dismantling the palace's protective order? They say a king must always remain composed, but King Charles was never known for silence under pressure. When his own wife's court began undermining Catherine and his guards refused to obey, something inside him snapped. This wasn't about protocol. It was about protection and legacy. For days, he watched as the whispers grew louder, the silence around Catherine's security thickened, and the rift between his authority and his household widened into something dangerously unstable. And then, it happened. In what insiders described as an unprecedented confrontation, Charles summoned the palace's top security officials to a closed-door session that would become the turning point of the crisis. No press, no agenda. Just fury, quiet at first, then roaring. Witnesses say his words cut sharper than any formal reprimand ever could. "I won't have a second Diana on my conscience," he snapped, slamming his fist onto the oak table. It wasn't just a warning, it was a reckoning. The king, long accused of being calculated and emotionally distant, now stood unfiltered, his voice trembling not with weakness, but with rage. His decision was immediate. He turned to his aides and gave the order without hesitation. They disobeyed a royal command, dismissed them all. No review, no appeals, just a clean sweep of every guard who had hesitated, defied, or chosen silence over duty. The room fell into stunned silence. Some believed it was the most decisive act of Charles's reign, others feared it was the most reckless. What no one could deny, however, was that it shattered the illusion of control that had lingered in the palace's air for far too long. But the chaos didn't end there. Behind that locked door, a second explosion followed. Queen Camilla, having learned of the meeting, entered mid-session and, according to one insider, exploded in protest. The clash between king and queen wasn't subtle. Heated words were exchanged, accusations of overreach and betrayal thrown like daggers. Camilla's exit was swift and symbolic. She stormed out of the room without a word to the staff, her heels echoing like punctuation on a sentence no one wanted to read aloud. The rift between them, once whispered about in private, had now become undeniable. It wasn't just a matter of palace procedure anymore, it was personal. In the hours that followed, Charles issued one more order, but this one came with something rare from the monarch: vulnerability. He demanded that Catherine's personal security be reassigned immediately, not to a team chosen by advisors, but by him alone. Each name vetted, each post approved. He wouldn't rely on anyone else to protect the woman he now recognized as both a daughter-in-law and a future monarch. In private, he confided to his closest circle, voice low but unwavering. "She is the future of this family, like it or not." There was no ambiguity. Charles had drawn a line in the sand, not just between order and rebellion, but between the old monarchy clinging to tradition and the new monarchy being built in Catherine's shadow. But while Charles acted to protect Catherine, he may have just started a war within his own family, one with consequences that would shake the monarchy. He's often seen as the calm heir, the diplomatic bridge between old and new. But when Prince William learned that the palace guards had withdrawn their protection from his wife, he erupted. What followed wasn't a polite request, it was an ultimatum that threatened to unravel the royal order. In private, William had always played the role of mediator, measured, strategic, and loyal to the institution. But the moment he was told that Catherine, the mother of his children and future queen consort, had been left vulnerable due to a palace power struggle, the facade cracked. What emerged wasn't rage for the cameras. It was something deeper, protective fury masked by royal restraint, and it came with consequences the monarchy hadn't anticipated. William immediately confronted senior advisors, bypassing protocol with a single demand: the reinstatement of Catherine's loyal guard unit. No substitutions, no political compromises. Only those handpicked to serve and protect her without question. When palace officials hesitated, citing internal reviews and chain-of-command barriers, William delivered his threat. Calmly, firmly, unshakably. If security was not restored, he would withdraw from all public duties indefinitely. And he meant it. A future king, willing to disappear from the stage to protect his wife, that wasn't a scandal. That was a declaration of war within the firm. It was no longer just a matter of safety. It was about trust and betrayal. Then came the leak. A secret recording, captured during a private conversation and circulated quietly among royal correspondents, changed everything. In it, William's voice trembled with anger, his words cutting through the veil of diplomacy. "If you won't protect her, I will." The quote exploded across headlines. For once, the man known for caution had spoken in absolutes. And behind palace walls, his words rang louder than any press release. The already fragile relationship between Charles and William began to fracture under the weight of accusation and emotional turmoil. Sources say their private meeting turned bitter, old grievances spilling out like wounds reopened. Years of restraint collapsed in minutes, leaving behind silence where unity used to live. Caught between the two most powerful men in the monarchy, royal advisors scrambled to contain the fallout. One group aligned with Charles, pleading for reason and preservation. Another sided with William, quietly admitting the king had gone too far. The palace, once airtight, began leaking more than just information. It began leaking loyalty. Under pressure, and facing public relations catastrophe, Charles conceded. Catherine's personal security was reinstated in full, her original team restored to active duty, but the damage was irreversible. The symbolic fracture between father and son had become visible to the world. The monarchy had taken a blow not from scandal, but from its own internal erosion. As William fought for Catherine's protection, the real question emerged. What had made her such a threat to the institution that guards refused to stand by her? She never asked for the spotlight, but Catherine's quiet strength, global elegance, and modern grace had started to overshadow the old ways. Some saw her as hope. Others saw her as a threat. Her rise wasn't accidental, it was inevitable. And that's what made it terrifying to the traditionalists. At first, her presence was seen as a refreshing chapter in the royal story. But when her humanitarian speeches began gaining global traction, when cameras started turning to her before anyone else, something shifted. The public didn't just admire her, they began to trust her in a way that transcended royal duty. In her every word, there was poise. In her silence, there was power. And as admiration turned into devotion, the balance within the monarchy began to tremble. The international press gave her a name that struck fear in certain corners of the institution. The people's modern queen. It was flattering on the surface, but beneath the headlines lay unease. That title didn't just elevate Catherine, it suggested succession. It positioned her not beside Camilla, but above her at least in the public eye. Behind the gates, royal insiders whispered their concerns. Catherine's star was rising too fast. Her ability to command attention, even in brief moments, was beginning to eclipse the old guard's carefully constructed image. Some feared the monarchy was morphing into something too modern, too empathetic, too centered around a woman who wasn't meant to be the crown jewel, yet somehow was becoming exactly that. Those fears gave birth to quiet retaliation. Behind polished smiles and public unity, a subtle campaign took shape. Loyalists tied to Camilla and the palace's old traditions began lobbying to reduce Catherine's visibility. No official statements were made, no documents signed, but her schedule began to thin. Key ceremonies, where her presence was once assumed, began to occur without her. The press noticed. So did the public. But no explanations came, only speculation. Catherine, once the beacon of continuity, was now being edged out of the very events meant to symbolize royal stability. It wasn't overt. It was deliberate. Controlled. Deniable. Still, the isolation couldn't be hidden entirely. Body language experts began dissecting footage of her few remaining appearances. The findings were consistent. Catherine seemed distanced, emotionally withdrawn, often positioned away from the central figures. Her smile remained, but it no longer reached her eyes. She was present, but not protected. Elevated by the people, yet estranged from the institution. And all the while, the silent campaign continued, refined, relentless, effective. The royal family had a history of polishing problems into silence. But with Catherine, the erasure felt targeted, strategic, rooted in fear not of what she had done, but of what she represented. But just as the nation rallied behind her, a darker force emerged, someone who wanted Catherine silenced, not just by exclusion, but by fear. Palace sources confirm it. Anonymous threats against Catherine increased in the weeks leading up to the guard dismissal. But instead of increasing her protection, her detail was weakened. Was this incompetence or something far more sinister? The signs were all there, buried in internal reports and classified communiques. MI5 had raised concerns, flagging multiple alerts tied directly to Catherine's public appearances and private movements. Intelligence specialists had noticed unusual digital chatter, veiled references, and ominous signals pointing to credible threats. Yet those warnings, instead of triggering enhanced protection, were quietly sidelined. The question wasn't why the threats were ignored, but who decided they weren't urgent enough to act on. Then came the leak. A confidential email, buried in the security command chain, exposed everything. It showed the head of Catherine's guard detail had deliberately downplayed the risk, calling the situation manageable and advising discretion over escalation. That decision, seemingly innocuous, now reads like negligence at best or collaboration at worst. More unsettling were the patterns that emerged alongside it. Security cameras assigned to Catherine's usual corridors mysteriously went offline for hours at a time. Patrols were delayed without explanation. Surveillance coverage was reduced when she travelled between residences. These weren't oversights, they were choices. And choices like that, in a palace built on discipline, don't happen by accident. Those closest to Catherine began to sense something was wrong. The pressure built in silence until it finally broke her composure. Insiders reveal that she reportedly collapsed into tears after receiving a direct threat, one that made it past protocol and into her private hands. She didn't share the contents, but her reaction said enough. The fear was no longer theoretical, it had crossed the line into personal. From that moment on, William refused to stand down. Protocol be damned, he began escorting her himself. Events, engagements, even casual outings, he was by her side, not as the heir to the throne, but as a man protecting his wife from a palace that had failed her. The most staggering fact? The guard dismissals, publicly seen as Charles's dramatic intervention, took place mere days after that updated intelligence crossed his desk. It wasn't until he saw the depth of the threat, the trail of ignored warnings, and his son's growing fury that the king acted. But by then, the damage wasn't just operational, it was emotional. Catherine had been left exposed, not just to external danger, but to the knowledge that parts of the institution she dedicated herself to had quietly turned away. The silence around these threats speaks volumes, but one act would shatter the illusion of unity forever. It was supposed to be a quiet evening, a dinner for visiting dignitaries. But when Catherine stepped into the corridor leading to her suite, something was wrong. Her guards were gone. No warning, no explanation, just silence. And in that moment, she knew. Someone wanted her alone. That night, the rhythm of palace life unraveled. Official schedules remained untouched. Smiles were exchanged at the reception. But behind the walls, a silent breach had occurred, one so calculated, so precise, it shook the core of royal security. According to eyewitnesses, the shift in Catherine's security detail had occurred hours before she even entered the corridor. Guards who were assigned to her vanished from their posts early, well before the official end of their duty. Their replacements never arrived. And no one sounded the alarm. In their place, a junior palace staffer, a young assistant without clearance or training, was hastily assigned to escort her to her suite. It wasn't just a breach of protocol. It was a blatant disregard for every rule that governed royal protection. The palace command center, normally a fortress of order, descended into chaos when someone finally noticed her security team was missing. Alarms weren't triggered, not because they failed, but because no one expected them to be necessary. The assumption had always been that loyalty would hold, that protocol would be followed. But that night, assumptions nearly became tragedy. As soon as the breach was confirmed, panic swept through the command chain. Phones rang, orders were scrambled, but by then, the damage was done. The king was alerted mid-event, and what happened next would mark one of the most explosive moments of his reign. Charles stormed into the royal command center and took control himself. For the first time since the crisis began, he overrode his entire Security Council. His orders were short, sharp, and unarguable. Find the guards, bring them to me. Within hours, they were located not on duty, not even on palace grounds, but in an unauthorized pub on the outskirts of London. No clearance, no explanation, no remorse. Charles didn't wait for justification. There were no second chances. He ordered their dismissal on the spot, effective immediately. The language was final, the tone absolute. The guards were stripped of duty, their access revoked before sunrise. No formal hearing, no appeals, because this wasn't just about a lapse in discipline, it was the culmination of a betrayal that had been building in shadows. And Catherine, the woman at the center of it all, had nearly become a victim not of outside threats, but of negligence from within. But even after Charles made his move, one final revelation would shake everything because someone had already begun preparing for Catherine's downfall. Weeks after the dust settled, a royal staffer leaked one final piece of evidence. A confidential memo circulated within the palace weeks before the guard scandal. Its contents? A directive to reassess Catherine's role in the context of long-term succession optics. It wasn't just about protection, it was about erasure. The document, marked strategic internal use only, had been carefully buried under layers of bureaucratic language, its phrasing sterile yet unmistakably clear. It proposed what it called a soft recalibration of Catherine's public exposure, suggesting that her increasing visibility had begun to complicate perception balance across the monarchy's generational tiers. In plain English, it meant she was becoming too powerful, too beloved, too central, and something had to be done. The author of the memo wasn't just a low-level aide, it was a senior figure on the Royal Strategy Council, someone trusted with the long-term image of the crown. The memo laid out a chilling plan: reduce Catherine's frontline engagements, limit solo appearances, and subtly adjust ceremonial placement to refocus attention on established senior figures. Most shocking of all, it included a subsection labeled Security Modifiability, referencing how protection protocols could be adapted as part of the overall perception strategy. The implication was damning. Catherine's diminished security may not have been negligence, it may have been intentional. What elevated this from suspicion to scandal was the list of names affixed to the bottom of the document. Multiple senior aides, each aligned with Camilla's inner circle, had signed off on the strategy. They had endorsed the erasure, piece by piece, of a woman who had come to represent the future of the monarchy. And somehow, through all of this, King Charles had remained unaware. When the memo surfaced and was placed on his desk, insiders say he erupted, not with political calculation but with genuine outrage. "Who gave you the authority?" he reportedly demanded. "Who let this go forward without my knowledge?" The room, for once, had no answers. In the days that followed, Charles acted swiftly. Every name attached to the memo was placed under formal review. Several were quietly reassigned. Others, insiders believe, were forced into early retirement. And Catherine's entire security detail was replaced with a new team, one personally vetted by the king and answerable only to the highest level of royal command. But no amount of restructuring could undo the damage that had been done. The memo hadn't just exposed a conspiracy, it had revealed a truth too many had ignored. Catherine had become more than a royal. She had become a threat to those who clung to the old way of doing things. The monarchy may have survived this fracture, but the crown's future was changed forever. Catherine wasn't just a figurehead now, she had become a symbol, and symbols are harder to silence than queens. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.